A landmark randomized controlled trial by Robert Emmons and Michael McCullough asked one group to write about things they were grateful for each week, another to write about daily hassles, and a third to write about neutral events. After 10 weeks, the gratitude group reported 25% higher life satisfaction, exercised 1.5 more hours per week, reported fewer health complaints, and felt more optimistic about the upcoming week compared to the other groups. These aren't trivial differences in subjective mood. They are multi-domain behavioral changes produced by a simple weekly writing practice. Gratitude journaling, when practiced with the specificity and methodology that the research shows actually works, is one of the most rigorously validated well-being interventions in positive psychology. The science of gratitude is more mechanistically specific than most people realize. Neuroimaging research by Pratik Kini and colleagues at Indiana University showed that a gratitude writing intervention produced lasting changes in brain activity, specifically increased medial prefrontal cortex activity during a gratitude task, even 3 months after the intervention ended. This suggests that gratitude journaling produces genuine neural restructuring, not just a temporary mood lift. The prefrontal cortex changes reflect a shift in attentional baseline. Regular gratitude practice trains the brain to more readily detect positive stimuli in the environment, functioning as a genuine cognitive retraining intervention rather than a feel-good exercise. The science of gratitude draws from positive psychology RCTs, neuroimaging research, and meta-analytic reviews of well-being interventions. Today's sources represent the most methodologically rigorous research available, including the Emmons Foundational RCT and the first neuroimaging study of gratitude writing effects on brain activity. The human brain has a well-documented negativity bias, the tendency to weight negative events, experiences, and stimuli more heavily than positive ones of equal objective magnitude. This bias is evolutionarily adaptive. Attending more carefully to threats than opportunities improves survival in ancestral environments. But in modern life, where the majority of daily experiences are neutral to mildly positive and genuine life threats are rare, the negativity bias systematically distorts one's assessment of one's life. Research shows that this bias contributes substantially to anxiety, depression, and chronic stress. Gratitude journaling is, in neurological terms, a deliberate intervention to counteract negativity bias by training selective attention toward positive features of experience. The biggest myth about gratitude journaling is that any gratitude practice produces the research-documented benefits, that simply writing "I'm grateful for my family, health, and coffee" each morning is equivalent to the structured intervention tested in the research. The data show that the specificity and freshness of gratitude items are crucial. Research by Luba Mirsky and colleagues found that writing the same generic grateful items repeatedly produces habituation. The emotional response diminishes with repetition. The most effective gratitude practices involve specific, detailed, novel items and varying the frequency to prevent habituation. 3 times per week appears to outperform daily in some studies precisely because it prevents the diminishing returns of routine. Robert Emmons and Michael McCullough at UC Davis and University of Miami conducted one of the most important gratitude studies ever published. In a 10-week randomized trial, participants in the gratitude condition wrote weekly about 5 things they were grateful for from the past week. The gratitude group showed significantly higher well-being on validated measures, reported 1.5 more hours of exercise per week, and had fewer physical health complaints compared to the hassles group and the neutral events group. The behavioral spillover to exercise, a domain completely unrelated to the gratitude writing, is particularly significant as evidence of genuine well-being improvement rather than reporting bias. Martin Seligman's team at the University of Pennsylvania tested several positive psychology interventions in a large online RCT. The 3 Good Things intervention, writing about 3 things that went well each day and their causes for 1 week, produced lasting well-being improvements that were still significant 6 months later. The extended effectiveness relative to the intervention period suggests neuroplasticity. The week of structured attention training appears to initiate an attentional shift that persists because the trained brain more readily engages the same processing style spontaneously. 6-month effects from a 1-week writing intervention represent an exceptional return on cognitive investment. Pratik Kini and colleagues at Indiana University conducted the first neuroimaging study of gratitude writing effects on brain function. Participants who wrote gratitude letters to others in their lives were then scanned, while experiencing gratitude in an fMRI task 3 months later. Compared to a control group, the gratitude writers showed significantly greater medial prefrontal cortex activity during the gratitude task, a region associated with moral cognition, meaning-making, and reward processing, even 3 months after the writing intervention ended. This finding suggests that gratitude writing produces lasting neural restructuring, The brain becomes more readily activatable to grateful states as a result of the practice. Building a gratitude journaling habit requires understanding how the novelty and specificity requirements interact with habit frequency. The research supports a somewhat counterintuitive frequency recommendation. 3 times per week appears to produce better outcomes than daily practice in studies that have directly compared them. The reason is that daily writing of genuinely novel, specific items becomes increasingly difficult, and when people default to generic entries, the emotional activation that drives the neural effects diminishes. Building specificity skills before increasing frequency is the optimal sequencing for long-term practice. Meta-analyses of gratitude and positive psychology interventions confirm meaningful well-being benefits that persist beyond the active intervention period. The data reflect both the direct effects of gratitude writing on mood and the lasting neural changes that produce ongoing attentional improvements. The physical health effects, lower inflammation, better sleep, more exercise, are particularly noteworthy as they suggest that the well-being benefits are not merely subjective reporting improvements. The evidence-based gratitude journaling framework incorporates the specificity, novelty, and frequency requirements that distinguish effective from ineffective practice. Write 3 items 3 times per week, not daily. For each item, include what specifically happened, why it mattered to you personally, and what it was about the situation that you appreciated. Avoid generic or habitual entries. Health and family every session produces habituation within weeks. And periodically write gratitude letters to specific people. The neuroimaging research shows this activates the strongest and most lasting neural effects. The gratitude journaling habit loop is uniquely self-sustaining once the attentional shift begins. As the practice trains the brain to more readily detect positive stimuli, the writer begins noticing potential gratitude items throughout the day, which makes the journaling session easier, more natural, and more rewarding. This positive feedback between attentional training and journaling ease is why consistent practitioners report that the practice feels increasingly effortless and meaningful over time. Build your gratitude journaling habit with 5 evidence-based actions. Choose 3 fixed days per week, for example, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and set a recurring alarm. Use a dedicated physical notebook rather than a notes app. The physical act of writing by hand activates different neural processes than typing. Write 3 items per session with a minimum of 2 to 3 sentences each. This is the specificity minimum. Include at least 1 item about a specific person, 1 about a specific experience, and 1 about something you often overlook. And within the next week, write a detailed gratitude letter to one person in your life. You don't need to send it, but the neuroimaging research supports writing it. Gratitude journaling habit failure most commonly occurs through the twin problems of generic entries and overfrequency. Pre-planning responses to the specific situations that produce low-quality or skip sessions protects the practice from the habituation that derails most people's gratitude habits. Gratitude journaling is one of the most rigorously tested positive psychology interventions, with documented effects on well-being, exercise behavior, physical health complaints, and brain activity. The Emmons RCT showed 25% higher life satisfaction and 1.5 more hours of weekly exercise from a weekly gratitude practice. Neuroimaging shows lasting changes in medial prefrontal cortex activity. The active ingredients are specificity and novelty, not frequency. 3 sessions per week with specific, detailed, novel entries outperforms daily generic gratitude lists. Monthly gratitude letters produce the strongest and most lasting neural changes. Tonight, write 3 specific things you're grateful for, not generic, but specific moments with detail. Do this 3 times this week. That's the research-backed protocol. Subscribe to Habits, backed by science for the evidence on what actually changes how you feel about your life. Your attention is trainable. What you practice noticing expands.